Welcome to the Voice of Prison. This is your host, John Martin, and I have numerous guests tonight. I have Rob Konesh, I have Chris Kirk, and I have Charlie Garbinian, the good doctor. He's the good doctor because he's the only one that makes any sense in talking about education.
Thank you, John. I'm humbled.
We're going to start with just a few questions tonight, and with this many people here, we're going to fill it up fast. Rob is going to start with the crystal ball.
Every once in a while, I like to break out that euphemistical crystal ball and take a peer into it and see what I can see and see what I've seen and project what we're going to see. So at this point, I'd love to open it up with this crystal ball analogy and take a look. And here's my take. I'm looking into that crystal ball, and I look back 10, maybe 15, 20 years, and I see a lovely town that I moved to at that point around the turn of the century. It seemed like it was a great place to live, and then it started really filling up with a lot of new houses, new developments, a lot of duplexes, a lot more apartment complexes as we're seeing, talk of 41B projects that are still in the works, and I start to see our schools filling up. And I look back 10 years ago and I saw the tax override issues going on, people fighting for and against Proposition 2.5 overrides, and there were two distinct groups in town at that point. One was obviously the Shrewsbury for Responsible Taxation group, and then there was also the CBS group, which was mainly for the overrides and wanted to really keep funding and funding and building and building. And now I look to see where they are today. It seems like most of that CBS board has infiltrated most of the town boards, whether it's the finance committee, the school committee, and mainly the Board of Selectmen. Those are the big three that make the decisions in this town. Obviously, there are certain other boards that make a lot of decisions too, but that seems like what has gone on is that they plan strategically to place themselves among these boards so that their influence could be felt and their decisions be made. And that's certainly what elected town government is supposed to do, especially if it's an elected position, but finance committee is not an elected position. And then when you look at town meeting members, which ones have associations with what they call nepotism issues. So there's certainly a lot of that going on. I mean, we tried to get a handle or a number on how many people are actually, working in this town that have family members on different boards that are pushing for certain things. And the big issue that I never could understand was why does our school committee not fight back against the teachers union and just get stuck with all these raises and step increases and filling up these new schools that we have with more teachers. I mean, I think they've added over 100 teachers in the last couple of years. So that's what my crystal ball in the past looks like. Going forward, I think I see this town progressing along the same lines as it is. I mean, obviously we have a new school coming, and that's going to be a very big construction project. I see the construction trailers are up there already. They're going to take down that road to try to straighten it out just a little bit in front of where the school is going to be on Lake Street, but they're not really addressing the rest of that road all the way down to South Quinsigamond. That's where the buses originate from every day. So that's going to be a very interesting, a lot of traffic in that area on that road. And as you project future growth, I already can see that already there's talk about adding more classrooms to the high school, whether it's going to be 2 different wings or extra rooms off the back. I think that's how they made the high school, to make it available to have an addition put on eventually. So that's going to be in the works most likely right after this next elementary complex is done. So obviously people moved here when I did, low tax rate, low electrical, low cable and internet, and good facilities than some of the surrounding areas. But I think we're starting to catch up to some of the Metro West towns, even though we're not considered Metro West, we're one town away, even though we're in the Worcester area. And I just foresee more overcrowding, more complexes, more traffic, and hopefully it's just not going to explode at one point. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Well, first of all, CBS, the Citizens for a Better Shrewsbury, the pro-government forces are the ones who are going to get appointed to boards, going to get elected to boards because, or at least get appointed because you're not going to fill boards with people who are against your government, and the aim of just about every government is to get more revenue. There's always something that needs to be done that needs more revenue. So you're going to get the pro-government people on these boards, and if you have a reputation for being anti-government, you're going to be overlooked when you submit your resume, shall we say. And as for raises for teachers, why isn't the school committee putting the brakes on that? If you do a little checking, you will discover that the history of Shrewsbury is 4% annual increase in the amount of money that's spent on teachers' salaries and 3.65% annual increase for salaries of administrators, which means that the administrators are doing just about as well as the teachers. And I suspect that the argument is if the teachers are getting 4% raises, certainly they can't do better than the administrators, and therefore there really isn't too much of an incentive to put the brakes on when it comes to giving people raises. So as for the future of Shrewsbury, well, we are very close to being a city, and we're getting more and more apartment complexes. We have a couple of apartment complexes that were built by Avalon. There's another one being built down on Route 20. There is the complex that's built on what used to be the old Spags property on Route 9. So, and also at the same time, a road network that was intended to be serviced by horses and carriages is now being crammed full of cars that aren't trying to flood into the subdivisions. So we're sort of suffering the fate of just about every successful suburb, which is that we end up turning into the same sort of thing that people left the city in order to escape. Overcrowded streets, overcrowded, no open space, and in addition to that, the two attractions that remain for Shrewsbury are that it's cheap, but it's getting less cheap as we have new charges for new sewer treatment plants, overrides, we have fees for trash collection, and fees for this, fees for that. So it's, even though your property tax bill may not be high, your other bills are going to be increasing. So it's becoming less and less of a bargain. And as we've seen, the cost of housing here is going up and up. So I sort of suspect, the last thing I was going to say is that the schools here have a reputation for being very good, but as Mr. Garabedian and I suspect later in this program will point out, a lot of the good performance of our schools is due to the fact that the curriculum is being watered down more and more and more. And so if you're expected to learn less and less and less, you can do very well. So I don't know how much longer this sort of unlimited growth is going to continue, but I am not optimistic. And if anybody is thinking about getting out, now's the time to go.
That's what just happened in my neighborhood. Somebody came in, took a house that was kind of run down a little bit, spent about a year and a half on it, and now just turned about $100,000 profit on a flip.
Yeah, oh, I see neighborhoods that used to be full of nice little ranch houses, a good house for a young family starting out or an elderly couple, and you buy a ranch house, tear it down, and replace it with a McMansion. So, you know,
That's coming,
yes,
and that's coming quick.
yes.
Joe, do you have a comment? You want to say something?
Well, one other thing I believe you didn't mention was the definite necessity of building a new police station. And hopefully that I have toured through a few years ago. I think it was maybe 5, 6 years ago. I went through that facility. And that is something that is definitely in need of either overhaul or replacement.
Yes, that's,
I mean, that is wrong, and I can see what the police are going through. I mean, that is definitely something that I would want to spend money on, and that has to be done. I think that should be done before anything else with the schools.
yeah, you have policemen working in what is essentially an attic, so.
Right, I mean, that's deplorable. That is deplorable.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't ever, I think they have to have like morning roll call in the locker room because there's
Right,
no other
right,
place to
right,
put
right,
it.
right.
So,
There's a lot of deficiency there. And the
Yeah.
question is, where are they going to place it? And if you look at that area, as you look at the police station, to the left of it, going out toward Maple Avenue, there's a wooded area there, but
Yeah.
there's always collection of water there. So I believe that probably cannot be used. Behind it, I know, is flooded with water. And as you look to the right of it, behind the town hall, that is always full of water. And I think that may be classified as wetlands. So probably they wouldn't be able to do it. So as I look, every time I walk through there, I say, if we needed a new police station, where would it be here? Where would it be located? It would be here. And
I know that Dan Morgado wanted what he called one-stop shopping with all the municipal buildings stuck in one area, but I don't know. as you
right,
say.
which I think is a good idea, because I think it leads to efficiency for everybody. Unfortunately, I think we're caught between a rock and a hard place. A lot of times I've thought that maybe the Beale School area would be a good place for a police station. People say there's a lot of traffic up there. Well, to me, there's just as much traffic on Maple Avenue. There's more up there, I know, but it's a centrally located location. Now, whether or not that land is big enough to handle a police station, I don't know. I don't know if there's not enough land to do that.
Well, they would almost need a substation down in the White City area because most of the responses seem to be in that
They're
area.
always going down there.
Yeah.
There's always something that is going down there. But in terms of the schools, we keep on, in my opinion, looking at roles of the schools that are non-academic. And just most recently at the town meeting of May, they announced the appointment of a 4th assistant superintendent. And before I even get to the 4th assistant superintendent, we traditionally always had a superintendent, then an assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum, which is really pretty much standard today for school systems. And then we had a position of business manager. They made that in a position of assistant superintendent in charge of finance. And the question is, why? And nobody answers that question. It's never really, in my opinion, it's never been justified. But it's another assistant superintendent. And then a year ago, more than a year ago, in the first budget proposal by the superintendent, he had put in a 3rd assistant superintendent in charge of student services. But in the budget process, he had to pare his budget down. That position was eliminated. And then at the beginning of school, September 2018, he announced the position of assistant superintendent in charge of student services. And that position was the director of special education. So so now, less than a year later, we now have a 4th assistant superintendent. And as I understand it, this person is to be attempting to coordinate community partnerships for newly created position to address the increasing need to seek funding through other community sources. So they're looking for private money to come into the public schools and then meet the social, emotional needs of the students. Now, does that mean psychological counseling for the students, psychiatric counseling for the students? And the other question is, how many students do we have that are in need? That number has never been brought out. I've never heard it. What percentage of students and what age groups is this going to affect? Is it just the young people? Is it just the high school people? Is it across the board? And then the other question would be, why do they have emotional psychiatric problems? I don't know, maybe I should use the word psychiatric, but definitely emotional problems, as they're saying here. And should this be the focus of schools? There was, in the booklet that was given to town meeting members regarding the school budget, they had a page in here that gave the portrait of a graduate of the Shrewsbury Public Schools.
These are the goals that a graduate should meet.
Right. And there are 6 areas. And unfortunately, only one of them is academic. The first one they have listed, and again, I don't know if these are listed in terms of importance. The first
Charlie,
one.
can we get back to that?
Yeah, sure, John.
I have something to say about the first question.
Okay, go ahead.
The crystal ball.
I think that the future is more like what we're seeing today, which is the town manager now has been convinced that he can add 1 fireman a year. It's only $20,000. I have no idea how many they're going to add, but he's already in mindset, if it's a small problem, he'll go fix it. Before you know it, there won't be any margin left in our budget.
Well, thank you for your input on that. I think you're right, John. At least we know that he has a plan with the firemen to pick up, because with all these 55-plus neighborhoods sprouting up, we're going to need more fire and police. Charlie, back to where you were with your...
Back to the schools.
Back to the school. Just finish that up.
In the booklet that was distributed to town meeting members that had information about the schools, they had a 2-page description as to what the portrait of a Shrewsbury Public School graduate looks like. And they have 6 major topics by which they would evaluate a student from public schools in Shrewsbury. The 6 areas are global citizenship and engagement, collaboration and communication, resilience and focus, innovation, critical thinking and content mastery, and leadership. Of those 6, there's only one of them that's academic.
You only have
Critical learning and content mastery. And my question is, why have we gone into these other 5 non-academic areas when we pay taxes to support the schools? The schools, in my opinion, as I go in to teach, I go there for one reason, to teach mathematics, content, knowledge. My courses obviously have critical thinking, but mathematics is critical thinking, or it should be. And what I teach in terms of academics can be very, very clearly measured. And there is a need for this when these students leave and go out in whatever employment they secure. Sooner or later, their mathematics or their mathematical thinking is going to be very important to them. The other areas clearly are things that we like to see all people have those type of characteristics. But the question is, how can you measure all of those 5 areas? For instance, in the leadership, one of the subtopics would be students use interpersonal and problem-solving skills to influence and guide others toward a goal. How can that be measured? That is a big question. If I may go back to 1965, even before 1965, when I was in college and I started teaching, one of the major thrusts in education was educational objectives, behavioral objectives. And any time you, as a teacher, wanted to have a behavioral objective in your teaching, you had to make sure that you exhibited a way where you could measure it with validity. That was very, very important. All of these other areas cannot be measured at all. And I seriously question how much of our money is going to these non-academic areas. And I look at the people in the schools, and I don't know what all the personnel are about in the school system, but I wonder how many of them are really focusing on academics only, and how many of them are focused on these non-academic areas. And I would seriously raise the question for everybody to consider, not just in Shrewsbury, but in this country. What is the real role of our schools? What should it be? From kindergarten all the way through graduate school, all the way to schools that grant a PhD. What is the goal? Is it truly academic? And the more I look at it, I hate to say, I think it's non-academic. And that's very sad.
Yes, you don't have to be able to write legibly. You don't have to be able to write a grammatically correct, coherent sentence. You don't have to be able to know what multiplication tables are. But it is important that you should be able to work effectively in a climate of ambiguity and changing priorities.
Right. You just chose that randomly, Chris.
Yes,
But
I mean,
if you chose any of these, they all basically have the same tone.
Demonstrate ability to work effectively and respectfully with diverse teams. Listen effectively to decipher meaning of knowledge, values, attitudes, and intentions. Bland mush that you can't really evaluate. And the nice thing about that is that it doesn't matter whether the teacher succeeds or fails in cultivating those qualities and abilities in a student, because since there's no way to measure it,
Right,
there's no way to there's no way to fail.
Right. Whereas when you go into academic behavioral objectives, I could say one objective would be the student can demonstrate that he can integrate a function and find the area between certain parameters of a curve.
Yes, or simple algebra like what is 17% of $100 or whatever.
Well, yeah,
You know,
that's fifth grade arithmetic.
When you
Used
go
to be.
when you go to a store, what does 20% off of the sale price mean?
Right.
You know.
Those are the things that we can measure. Those are the things we can see very clearly. And somehow these non-academic areas have come into our education today.
Yes, a teacher doesn't have to worry too much about failing to convey a use of wide range of idea creation techniques and problem-solving techniques. Okay.
And this represents money for us.
Yeah, that's you get paid more and more for teaching less and less.
Less and less, right. And what is sad is that we have teachers, I believe, that are going along with this.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm not going to be accusatory because I'm not there. I'm not seeing it. And the question I would ask is, are they doing this voluntarily, or are they being forced by the administration? Because many of them, if they're non-tenured people, they have to go along until they get tenure, so as not to make any difficulty, otherwise they wouldn't get tenure. But even if they have tenure, I have seen teachers, when I was teaching in high school, that would just go along because they wanted to be in the good graces of the administration and school committee. Why, I don't know. Their job was secure. They couldn't do much to them, really. They could not independently express a different opinion. And if you did, they felt as though they would be threatened somehow, some way.
You wouldn't become dean of the department.
Perhaps not. Yeah, there's something else if you want to. So I believe that the entire academic purpose of the schools has been lost. And I question if it'll ever come back and what we have to do so that it would come back, so schools can really produce students that are academically gifted.
I don't know how you would use the interpersonal and problem-solving skills to influence and guide others towards a goal, to like design a bridge.
Right, exactly right. Right, or to find a cure for cancer, or whatever profession they go into.
Yeah, I mean, you need a basic knowledge of biology and chemistry and history. You have to know that, for example, the Civil War occurred sometime before 1940.
Yes, that's right. Right. And going back to your comment about the writing skills, these very basic skills are no longer with us.
Yeah.
And even if they can write, the quality of their writing. When I look at the mathematics that I expect them to write out, it is very difficult to decipher what they are writing because there's no organization to the work. There's no clarity.
No.
And I don't believe that's going to be a clear communication. That's just the mathematics. And then when they turn around and have to write something out, the use of the English language just simply does not exist. Punctuation, sentence structure, spelling, all those things are very, very weak.
Guys, as
Go
we're
ahead,
wrapping
Rob.
it up here in the last 3 minutes or so, I just wanted to personally thank a colleague of ours, a retiring town meeting member, someone who was actually seen to be the most prepared person that I've ever seen at a town meeting, John Lukash.
Oh, yes, very definitely.
Definitely.
Okay, John Lukash is going to be moving out of town.
Will
I
be
think
sorely missed by some.
most of us know that already, but you know, his name is not going to be one that they're bowing down to at town meeting
No.
and thanking for all his hard work. But I'd like to say thank you to John Lukash.
Very definitely.
Because
Most
this
definitely.
guy has been not only a mentor to some people, a role model, and someone who doesn't jump on the bandwagon just because it's going by. And I really appreciate this gentleman.
Yes, he scrupulously did his homework. He never his integrity was beyond question. He was devoted to the best for the citizens of Shrewsbury, and the town government showed its appreciation by openly ridiculing him and humiliating him. So he's.
And that shows you the level of our elected officials that they would do that. And that's very sad, I think. But kudos to John. And
Yeah.
it's certainly a tip of my hat to him.
Yeah. Where
And
is
he
that?
will-
Where is that in the core?
Right, I know, right.
Yeah, there's a lot of going along and getting along, but very little on criticizing, opposing, correcting.
That definitely is a problem, is that we cannot seem to disagree and still be respectful.
No.
We have to attack people personally. And to me, that shows a very low class of person, lack of breeding, lack of couth, definitely. So how can people like that effectively run a government?
Yes, not only that, but if you're going to disagree, if you're going to basically quash anybody who disagrees with you, it means that you're sort of like the Soviet Union in its last days, that we're not going to listen to any bad news. That does not save you.
I'd like to have the last word.
Go ahead.
It's yours, John.
Just remember, in the last few years, they've added a lot of staff to the schools. Of course, they've had more students, but the gradings that we get from the state is going down. They were at the B level just 2 years ago, and now they're at the C level. They may turn it around with getting more classrooms and more teachers out there, but it's not encouraging. So I want to thank everybody for watching. See you all next month.